Well, good afternoon. Friday at 1 o'clock. You ready to tackle the madness of the market? It's kind of nutty out there, isn't it? So here's what's fun. This has been a kind of a week long. We had Monday securing your buyer transaction. We had Wednesday, which was really focused more on multiple offers on either side of the transaction. And today's focus is on exactly what it's feeling like out there, right? And that is that kind of the Wild West. Everything's kind of crazy. Everyone's kind of crazy. And so when we say the madness of the market, that's kind of what we mean, right? And so what we'd like to do today is just kind of run through and give you a couple of strategies, a couple of pointers, a couple of tricks of the trade, if you will, to make sure that you can remain as effective as possible throughout whatever's going on around you, but mostly hear from you and hear from you about what it is you're experiencing and kind of brainstorm with you some strategies that we think could help kind of keep your head on straight and keep your ability to keep your clients' heads on straight, focused on the prize, which of course is that closing. So let me bring in my friend and yours, Ms. Debbie Orr. Hello, Debbie. How are you today?
I am just spectacular. Having a great day.
No, you look spectacular. So it's good that you actually match how you feel. I love that about you.
All good.
So how do you want to kick us off today? Because I know that you and I were having a conversation earlier around a lot of this that is so relevant. Where do you think you want to start before we open it up for scenarios and questions?
Well, I think just with the concept of there's a tendency right now to feel like there's more that we can't accomplish in the market than that we can accomplish in the market. It feels like we don't have a lot of things to sell. Boo-hoo. It's hard to get listings. Boo-hoo. And we have a whole belief system around this that we need to apply right now. I think all that we can talk kind of high and mighty and in very optimistic terms when things are going well. And it's when things are challenged that we really need to decide, do I believe what I talk about when things are going well, or is that just hooey? And what I mean by that is things like the one thing that talks about what is one thing that I can do to get to the destination that I want to get to. And it's never been more of a mind game than it is right now. Any of you who have been through Bold and recall the emphasis on mindset. And I know, Rick, you and I talked about affirmations yesterday. We haven't talked about affirmations in a long time. And it's more important now than ever that you start your day with a positive sense of what can happen.
Yeah, I love that. And it's, you mentioned Bold. I was having a conversation. I was telling the Ignite students last night that I got to have a coaching conversation yesterday. That was a pointed and relatively direct coaching conversation. And in it, the reference I made, again, speaking of Bold, was, it sounds like we're having a point far conversation.
Right.
So for those of you who have not been through Bold or have not been through Bold, 97 times, like many of us have, the point far, PTFAR, stands for this. And if you don't know this, you should write it down because it's kind of in a circle, right? At the top of the circle is the P, and then you're going to go clockwise around to the T, the F, the A, and the R. And the P ultimately stands for programming. It's like, what are you telling yourself? What information are you feeding yourself? Are you filling your brain with good stuff, or are you filling your stuff with not so good stuff? Are you filling your stuff with all the can'ts that Debbie mentioned? Or are you filling your brain with all the cans? Because your programming leads then to your thoughts. So how you're programming leads to how you think. Your thoughts then lead to your feelings. Your feelings are what drive how you behave. So your feelings ultimately dictate your actions, which is the A, and your activities, those actions, they dictate your results, which is your R. And then your results will just feed back into your programming. So it's this big loop, right? And if the programming is wrong, or if the programming is different than the results that if the programming doesn't feed the results you want, well, guess what? The results that you get will just continue to reinforce that programming. So you're stuck in this loop. So it really, your mindset nowadays, I'm telling you what, crazy important, really good point, Deb.
Well, and one of the things that I'm hearing from a lot of people is that even if they've never been people who journaled, they're journaling this year. And that too is a part of the BOLD program. They encourage daily journaling. And I've always thought, oh yeah, I do that. And I do that infrequently. I've been doing it more consistently, and it's really interesting how that also helps you become aware. And this is a conversation that's all over the Keller Williams models. This is something that takes you to more purposeful behavior. And that purposeful behavior, I love the point far that you reviewed, because that purposeful behavior leads you to activities that prove to you that you determine your business. You decide where you're going to end up this year, not the market. I'll ask any of you, how many transactions do you have on your goals to accomplish this year? Is it 12? Is it 25? Is it 50? Is it 100? And then I'll ask the question, are there, and we'll use the big number, 100 transactions to be had in the market this year? You know there are more than that. There are more than that in any one town. So what are you telling yourself about your opportunity?
Yeah, so focusing back on where you started, which is what are the cans in your world versus the can'ts, right? It's so easy to make the list of what we can't do, mm-hmm. right? And it's easy because they're kind of top of mind. Mm-hmm. It's easy because as human beings, negative almost always outweighs positive unless you work at it, right? And it's easy because saying I can't do something and then blaming another person or a circumstance, I can't sell these buyers a house because there just isn't any inventory, it absolves you of a solution, doesn't it? And so what are the thoughts about, what are the cans that we should focus on this morning? Deb, what based on some of the things you and I have been talking about, what can you do? What should people be focusing on to make sure that the cans are rising to the top and the can'ts continue to get pushed down?
So one of the really easy things to do is to continue, or if you haven't been doing it, start now. It's never too late to look at your database and literally call through that database. I would say reach out to your database, and you can do it in multiple media, and yet the calls through to the database are much more powerful. And what are those calls? Call through and make plain and simple, easy calls, really easy calls, care calls. Does everybody know what a care call is? We have some nods and some shaking of heads, so we'll talk about them. They're easy peasy. It's just calling people you know And it doesn't have to be just your nearest and dearest, it's anybody you know. And just say, I've been thinking about you. Everybody loves that opening, loves that opening. We love to be thought about. And then just checking in to see, how are you doing? What's changed in the last year as we've been going through these crazy times? Is there anything I can do for you? And it's most likely that it's going to come back around to them saying something to you. And then what can they do for you if they ask you?
Sounds like maybe a referral opportunity.
Ooh, who do you know who has even been casually thinking about selling? Because here's what I know. While it's very difficult to time a market, anybody who's waited till now to sell their house timed the market perfectly. Amazing. And right now is that opportunity. And I wouldn't want anyone to miss that opportunity if they want to sell.
So it sounds to me like the care call starts with something personal. And if it should happen to turn into business, it really is just more care. It's more about, I don't want people to miss, you or anyone you know, to miss the opportunities that may exist out in the marketplace. Let's set up some time to talk about it. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy.
And I think I always like to start with the easiest of the calls. I'll make a call to somebody who I know really would like to hear from me first, because once you make that first call, the rest is duck soup. It's just really easy, right? Not Donna shaking her head. She knows it.
Here's the big question, I think, of the day. Does lemon squeezy go along with duck soup? Is that a good compliment to duck soup? I'm not sure duck and lemon. I don't know. We'll have to play around with those analogies. So moving. So mindset. I mean, what I'm hearing is mindset kind of determines your actions. There are simple actions that you can be focused on today, like if you can't find a buyer some inventory, well, go find some inventory. Right? There's no reason that you can't take charge and find them a house. We have people who are writing letters to neighborhoods or complexes to see if anyone is interested in selling and getting appointments. We have people who are calling through neighborhoods and complexes. We have people who are door knocking through. Yes, even now, door knocking at a distance, right? So be careful what you're telling yourself about the things that you can and cannot do.
There's plenty that you can do. Plenty. The other thing that I would do is I would go back. Going back through your database is a great thing because there are people in there that you have not thought about in a long time, I'll guarantee it. And they may be just the ones that need to hear from you. But look at them strategically. Look at anybody who's in your database or on a list or in a pile of leftover open house documents, whatever, wherever you go. I would dig in every drawer and every box and every shelf and find every little bit of anybody I've talked to in the last 24 months.
Yeah, and just have another conversation. See what's going on, right? Hey, let's pivot a minute to another strategy and again, to help you manage the no one's saying, by the way, that there isn't some madness in the market right now, right? The whole reason we're sitting having a conversation is that we concur that there is some madness in the market, and yet being distracted by that is a choice, right? Being distracted by the craziness that's going on is definitely a choice. And if you just simply choose not to be distracted by it and instead choose to charge through it, choose to see it as a benefit, good things happen on the other side of that. Debbie, one of the things that we were talking about earlier was the idea of potholes, right? Potholes kind of being in transactions and about being surprised or not by them. And then about the idea of be careful you're not actually creating the problem in the transaction. Can you talk a little bit about those things?
Yes. So things definitely happen in transactions, and everybody knows Rick's expression. That just means it's Tuesday. They just happen, and there's a tendency that as a human that we kind of want to connect ourselves to whatever the problem is, and most often in terms of trying to help out, but sometimes in the guise of helping out, we buy into the problem, or we suggest a problem before it's a problem. And there's a fine line between anticipating things that will need to be dealt with and creating trouble and drama and exaggeration around a situation. And I'll use an example. A seller who says, I would sell my house now, but there is no place to go. And the natural tendency, the knee-jerk reaction to say, oh yeah, the inventory is terribly low right now. In fact, it's the lowest it's been in history. Well, that doesn't help. That's not helpful. What is helpful? What can we do about that? And so it's taking them down a different path. Well, would there be a sale price at which it would make sense for you to make a move? And reframe the conversation. And then figure out, and that crazy expression, out of the box. And I'm going to go back to common solutions versus best practices. Coming up with a creative solution for them if we can't find them a house in a timely manner. Doing everything in your power to find something, but then maybe coming up with something that's a little outside the lines. Maybe they take a 30-day vacation while the inventory comes back up. I mean, whatever it is, just thinking a little more creatively.
Well, and stay there a second, because that is one of the challenges that seems to make the market kind of maddening right now, right? Mm-hmm. Perhaps, as Alice says, they choose to rent for a year. Perhaps they choose to rent for 6 weeks or 8 weeks, right? There are short-term rentals out there. Perhaps Airbnbs that aren't getting a whole lot of traffic right now would be a perfect opportunity for someone to move into for some amount of money if you can't find rentals, right? Because that's the next natural place that most people go. Well, yeah, it's great to say they can rent, except there's no rentals out there either. But are you certain? Have you exhausted all of the options? Mm-hmm. Have you called through Airbnb? Have you called through VRBO? Have you looked at house sharing arrangements or time sharing arrangements? Lots of people are struggling right now and are more open to more innovative ideas. Because what Debbie's really saying is, don't get stuck, innovate. Choose to innovate, choose to look forward and say, okay, so like, I'm not going to take no for an answer here. Where is the yes here? And I'm going to keep digging until we find a yes. Some of those things that we put on the table may not be convenient, but Debbie said something really, really important. I want to make sure you caught it. Is there a price? Is there an amount of money? Is there an extra something that might be enough to have you be inconvenienced? What if it's a young couple who's just having their second child, who's selling their first starter house to buy up? If they could do that today and put an extra $30,000 or $40,000 in their bank account because of what the market is doing, and that means moving back in with mom and dad for 6 months, or renting for 6 months, or whatever, that might change their future. And so the really important takeaway from this whole conversation is, you don't get to make those decisions for them. Remember, we're the options people. Don't make judgment calls before you've put it on the table. Show them the options and let them make the choice. Just because it's something you wouldn't do or you think is inconvenient doesn't mean it's not a great opportunity for someone else. Make sense? Debbie also talked about not being surprised when things go sideways. Guys, the fact that there are potholes that exist in a transaction is the reason we have a job. That's what we do. We're like a really big iron, right? We come along and we iron out the wrinkles. You can all picture yourself now in a big iron costume, right? But that's what we do, right? We iron out the wrinkles. If there weren't any wrinkles, why would they need us? They could just do it on their own, right? So be careful that you're not making the mistake in a transaction when something goes wrong, that you're not blaming it on the madness of the market. That's just again, Tuesday. That's what happens in real estate transactions. Choose instead to be surprised when something doesn't go wrong, right?
The potholes have shifted. They aren't the same potholes necessarily. Some of them might be, but they may be different ones. So you just have to be prepared. You really have to be. I picture myself like Serena Williams. Serena Williams does not stand on the back line on her heels. She never goes on her heels, does she? She's always up on the balls of her feet and up on her toes, ready to go. You've got to be there.
And to further that, I love that you're using a tennis analogy.
I did it for you.
I can actually speak to that. So, and for those of you who don't know, the Australian Open starts in 4 days or 3 days, maybe, right? And so when Serena's in trouble on the court, what does she do? She charges the net. She's not a big net player, but when she is in trouble, she charges the net. She moves forward, right? She does not retreat. And so that's a really important analogy, right? Because when people feel like they're in trouble, oftentimes they like to pull back. Champions, achievers, people who create success and then create success for others, they look at that challenge and charge directly towards it. How? Because that shows the client confidence. Part of the reason some of your clients are retreating is because they see you retreating, either in how you're behaving or the words that you're saying. If you will help them take a positive, confident outlook on getting the results that they're looking for and charge forward, more of them will follow you. That's about leadership, right? If you think that leadership doesn't come into play in what we do, you are leading buyers and sellers forward. And so you have to make sure that as the leader in that scenario, you are confident and strong and have lots of different options that you can put on the table to help people charge forward.
And continuing down that path, one of the things that I know is helpful to me is to get very clear focus and retain that focus on what the end game is. Where are you going? What is your destination? What are you attempting to achieve? Where do you expect to end? And destination is determined by direction, not by intention. So it's getting into action and moving toward that destination. And it's really, really important that you keep that in very sharp focus and stick to that goal to get to the, in our cases, the closing table. That's the end game.
Yeah, so true. So true, right? Keep the end in mind and keep asking yourself the question, are the actions I'm taking right now moving me towards that end or away? Towards or away, right? Mm-hmm. Clarity of focus, key. Another attribute of a leader, right? That leader is creating the vision with clarity, painting that picture, and the people who are following that leader understand where we're going and they all agree that we're going in the same direction? Are you doing that for your clients in this confusing time? Because trust me, if you feel like there's madness in the market, imagine how the buyers and sellers that you represent feel. They don't do this every day like you do. They feel like there's madness when everything is normal because they don't do it very often. Mm. And so if we're normally called upon to keep everyone calm, focused, and level-headed and moving in the right direction, just imagine the responsibility on our shoulders now. And again, starting with you, starting with making sure you're focused, calm, and heading in the right direction. Positive.
Has anybody ever had a client kind of in the middle of the transaction or at the end of the transaction say, I don't know how you do this day in and day out, right? Right? I don't know how, and sometimes I'll go, I wonder why I do this day in and day out. And yet it's just kind of normal. It's and on the outside, it can look very chaotic. We're there as the Sherpas. I like to and I reference myself, right? But we're the Sherpas, and we just take people along and take them over the crevasses and through the glaciers and just keep them from falling down. And that's a big job. And that's what we've signed on to do. And I'm going to get on a tiny bit of a soapbox. In all cases, I mean, 99.9% of the time, we are behaving as fiduciaries. And we have a solemn obligation to those parties to guide them safely through the transaction so that they don't have harm.
Yeah, so Debbie makes a really good point, and it's worth underlining. I think we mentioned it earlier in the week, but let's just underline it again. The mindset of scarcity versus abundance is massively important in helping you manage your way through what can feel like chaos in the marketplace. Because when you come from a place of abundance, the chaos kind of bounces off of you a little bit more. It doesn't penetrate quite as much, right? When you're in that mindset, in that place of scarcity, all of a sudden, every little problem, you magnify the little molehill into a mountain. Because in your head, you're so concerned from a place of scarcity and desperation that if this doesn't close, how am I going to pay my bills? How am I going to pay the mortgage? What's going to happen to me? Mm-hmm. Right? And you have to be really careful about operating from that perspective. Terror is not a good motivator. As a matter of fact, it's a terrible motivator, and it makes you make decisions that you wouldn't normally make. So when you move yourself from that place of scarcity into that place of abundance, that doesn't necessarily mean suddenly you have more. It means you think abundantly. Mm-hmm. Because before you have more, you have to actually think you have more and think you're moving in that direction. So it's a mindset first that then shows up later on, right? And so from that spot, you're kind of like all of a sudden Superman, right? Or Wonder Woman. You've got things bouncing off of you that sometimes, if you weren't in that mindset, you would allow in, right? It's like scarcity is the kryptonite of your superpowers. Yeah. And then all of a sudden you're laden down with crap. And then everything that happens feels like a conspiracy against you, your buyers, and your business. It's not. Again, it's just Friday. And yet it starts to feel that way, right?
Donna makes a really good point. I think is it Dan Miller who did the storyboard thing, the storybook, how to describe your business in story. How does it go?
Story brand,
exactly. Who says the clients are always the heroes. They are the subject of the transaction. They are in the center of everything. It's their game. And we're just there to participate and, as I said, direct and guide. But that's a That's a mind shift. This is not about you. This is about the client in all cases.
So two more quick things, and then we'll open it up for questions and/or brainstorming about scenarios. The first is, now if I can say this to you with a straight face and tell you that when you can overcome this, there is power in it, anyone can overcome it. And that is, don't insist on being right. Right? There is probably no one on this call, well, maybe I'm looking at some of you on this call, that likes to be right more than I do. I really enjoy being right. And I will tell you, one of the business challenges for me over time was to be able to recognize that I have a desire to be right and figure out how to tamp that down, overcome that natural desire, and instead ask questions, and instead be curious, right? And instead recognize that this stuff that happens, the things people say inside of a transaction, even when they say it about you, it has nothing to do with you. Most of these people don't even know you. So don't take any of it personally, right? Instead, focus on getting the job done. I'll give you a quick example. I had someone come to me recently and say, you know what, I'm in this transaction and we used a 4-page contract because the buyers didn't want to play around with anything more specific than the 4-page contract. And so when it went to the buyer's attorney didn't like the fact it was a Fairfield County attorney. They didn't like that the agent and the buyers had gone to a 4-page contract because they felt excluded now from the process. It was silly of them to feel that way, and yet they felt excluded. And so something had to occur where a change had to be made, an addendum had to be written onto this contract. And so the buyers went to their attorney, and the attorney said, you know what? Your agent chose this document. Tell your agent to write it.
Oh.
And so the agent came to me and said, all right, can you help me write this? And I said, no, we're not writing an addendum to a contract. Neither one of us are attorneys. And certainly, even if we we're not attorneys in this transaction, right? And so I sent him back, and he came back to me and said, well, I went back and told them that you said that, and they berated you about being clearly one of the laziest brokers in Fairfield County, how they've never experienced a broker who wouldn't step in and write the contract addendum, how terrible and horrible and that I was. And so I said, okay, send me her name and information. And so I just went back to her. Again, that you can call me whatever you'd like. I know who I am. I know where I have strengths and where I have weaknesses. And it's okay. I don't have to be right that you've insulted me and now I feel like, I should file an ethics claim against you. Oh, guys, just move on from it. They can call me whatever they want. The end result was I had to get this contract written. So I went back to her and said, I understand there's some confusion around writing this contract. It would be I would consider it such a favor if you would take that on so that our common clients could move the sale of their home forward. Again, it didn't matter to me what she said because she ended up doing it. She told me directly what she thought of me as well. But you know what? She attached the addendum. So I didn't care. I just pushed delete and sent the addendum along. Like, who is this woman to me? I don't care about what she says about me.
That's behaving with the end in mind, keeping the end in mind. Don't let go of the destination.
Yeah. Just brush that stuff off. It doesn't matter, right? Sometimes you're the punching bag. It's part of the job description, right? It's just the way it works. You don't have to, there's an extent, right? I mean, I'm not saying go ahead and be abused by people, but certainly in the course of a transaction, if something is said about you or something is insinuated about you, Oh my goodness. And I've seen people take the time, effort, and energy because they come to me and say, can you believe this person said this about me? That's so untrue. And then tell me a whole story about why it's untrue. Guys, that is a waste of time and energy. Just move on from it. Solve the problem. The problem isn't what someone said about you. The problem is the addendum. The problem is the appraisal. The problem is whatever the problem is. Solve that. And then if you want to obsess about the other thing after it closes, go ahead and obsess about it then.
I'm going to ask a question, and this is, don't raise your hand. Ask yourself this question. Think about the situation that Rick just put on the table and ask yourself, had I been pushed against the wall like that by a client or by a party to the transaction, is what chance on a scale of 1 to 10 is there that I might have said, this isn't worth it. I give up. You can have it. I'm done. On a scale of 1 to 10, where might you have fallen? And more important, what could you do to pull it back to end up with a successful result?
Here's the follow-up to that, and then we're going to open it up for some questions. Here's the follow-up. The follow-up to that is, guys, one of the things that I continue to help myself improve on is stop telling the story, right? We do stuff during the day, and I don't always succeed in that, right? And oftentimes Debbie's the one I tell the story to, so she can vouch for the fact that I don't always succeed in that, right? But the simple reality is, when stuff like that happens, the more you tell the story over and over, oh, can you believe this happened? And you're just reliving it and giving it air. Just let that kind of stuff die. Don't take any of it personally. It's just real estate. Like, no one's calling your baby ugly. It's just real estate. And if we can take just a simple objective stand on that and just be firm about it, right? No one will die. I promise you that. If things go right, if things go wrong. It's important, but it's not emergency level. So don't take it personally. Don't sign up to be right. Steer clear of drama. If you have drama coming towards you, I'm going to tell you what, take that right-hand turn. Let it go past. Instead, ask some better questions. Wow, it sounds like you're angry. How can we fix that? How can I help you through to the other side on that? Wow, it sounds like this is a real concern for you. What action can we take to solve the problem?
Even, I am so sorry you feel that way. What's our next step?
Yes. I personally have to work on that one a little bit more.
Thought I'd help you out.
Right. And yet that's another path forward, right? I'll give you one more example. I was having a conversation with another broker this past weekend who clearly did a whole bunch of things really, really wrong. I mean, really, I'll tell you that story one day when it's all over. Really, really wrong. And I set a very clear path for what my expectations were of this other broker about what he would do to solve the problem. And I gave him 24 hours to go and solve it. And so when he called me back, he chose to start giving me the story. Like, we had to rehash the hash. We had to go through all of this stuff, why he was right. And so I stopped him a couple of times and said, with all due respect, I want to stay on what's relevant. What is the solution you're offering? What is the solution you're offering? I understand that. What is the solution you're offering? And he finally got the point that I wasn't interested in the drama or the you're wrong and I'm right and the agent did this and the agent said that, and maybe if you know what, if is not, well, we won't get into that. Call my grandmother if you want to know about if, right? But the idea of solving the problem and being okay asking people to solve the problem. How are we going to refocus, right? Maybe the script is, it sounds like we have a lot of emotion going on here. One of my main jobs is to keep us focused on making great business decisions. So if it's okay with you, I'd like to pivot out of emotion and into some facts such that we can solve the problem. There is no one that you say that to that doesn't step back and say, yeah, you know what? I'm probably churning a little bit here. Let's get down to the business of the business. And if they don't recognize it immediately, they will absolutely thank you at the end, because you're the one who kept steering them back to making better decisions, right? Oh, Donna asked the question.
Oh no!
I will tell it. I will stop.
He has to stop the recording.
So for those of you who are just returning, you'll have to text and ask about the if story, because it's not something we're recording for posterity. What questions do you have? What do you have for us? Scenarios or questions about kind of managing through some of the madness that's going on? Go ahead, Silva.
Thank you. My question is for Debbie, because this is exactly what happened to me. I asked my clients, what's next once you sold the house? They clearly had no answer for me, and they clearly didn't want to give me any answer. So it clearly turned into a huge waste of time. So how do I act? I mean, right there, I really wanted to say, well, I don't think I can help you then. But how would you deal with a situation like this? Because the answer was clearly, well, we don't know. You just sell the house and we'll figure it out, period.
So they're willing to wait to figure out the solution until they know they have a buyer.
Right.
And then they're willing to sign the offer and say, yes, we will sign the house, sell the house. I mean, that's the thing. You don't want to get yourself to the moment when a buyer has said yes, and then have them say, well, I can't say an unequivocal yes. So you do need to kind of stay with that until you get assurance that they really are going to play this game the way it's intended to play. And so ask another follow-up question. So, you know, I know you've said you'll figure it out later. I just need to have some clarity on what that means. And so do you mind if I role play just a little bit with you? And here I am, I have an offer on your house. The buyers are fully qualified. They're awesome buyers. They're buyers who really should buy your house. How will you respond? They want to move in 60 days. Tell me what you will respond to them. Play a little bit with them. Take them down a little bit more of a path. Because sometimes I find this happens with sellers who, when they see the closing date, they say, oh my gosh, I can't empty my house in 60 days. Yes, you can. Yes, I know you can. And we'll figure it out. We'll work backwards. And then they get 30 days into it and they say, oh, you were right. It works out. But play with them a little bit.
Thank you. That was helpful. Thank you.
I think too, the idea of being the options people is what comes up for me is, you know, that the script could simply be, you know, understanding that there's not clarity for you around that. Let's go through what your options are. So at the very least, you're thinking through those options. You may discard some right away. You may dive into others. Let's go through what the options are, right? Here's another really good script I find to help you through some of these conversations. Make them feel like they're part of the club. And so what that means is, if Debbie said to me, you know, I'm not really sure, I don't really care where I'm going, understood. You know, most of my other clients and I have a conversation that goes something like this to make sure that this is, you know, involve them in the club. Here's what I've done a couple of other times this week that clients found quite helpful. In the past, when clients have said that, one of the exercises we've done is X, and they always find that they feel so much better on the other side of that. Can we go through that exercise, right? When you make them feel a part of the larger club, you get to say things a little more strongly, because you're not saying, here's what I want you to do. You're saying, here's what other people and I have done to solve this issue, or to get on the other side of this, or to brainstorm through it. So that I might go there as well. Jay, what do you got for us?
Hey, sorry. So before I was driving, I'm still driving, but I couldn't hear you too much. I have a guy who wants to sell his condo on Hope Street, and that was exactly what you said was that he wants to sell, but he's not sure if he'll find something in North Stamford. He's looking in North Stamford. So I didn't really hear what you said or your tips on that, but I had an idea. Maybe if I could just ask him if or tell them like, hey, we help our buyers, look at properties that aren't yet on the market. If that would be helpful for you, I could send you some, or what's your? I didn't hear what you said before.
So that's getting someone who's looking to sell but is afraid that there's no place to go. I will tell you,
Exactly.
one of the scripts I used to use when I was still in the field on that was, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, one of the things I can guarantee you is in my entire career, I have never had someone be homeless. So I can confidently guarantee you that there is a solution to that. I'm curious, are you able to purchase without selling your current home? No? Okay, so step number one, if we do this sequentially, step number one is let's make plans to get your home on the market. Minimally, we can push your home out there and get the response of the market. We can also qualify your sale by saying that you reserve the right to find suitable housing. And so that may help us find buyers who are willing to be a little more flexible and still pay you well to get you to the closing date that makes sense. Would it be okay if we went through additional options while we're prepping your house to go on the market? Keep them focused on that activity, but recognize that there's tons of ways they can work through that. Deb?
Well, and that's where some of the out of the box thinking has to come in now. One of the questions that I've been asking all of the sellers recently is if your home sells very quickly, which it likely will, and you need to move before you find some place to live, do you have temporary options? And a lot of people do. Sometimes temporary isn't what they choose first or second, and yet it's an option.
And so go back to what Debbie put on the table before in that scenario as well. So I'm curious, knowing that the market will likely deliver more to your bottom line right now than if you wait for more inventory to come on, so that you're more confident about where you'll head.
Is it worth a little inconvenience?
Exactly right. Is it how much are you willing to be inconvenienced to pocket that additional $10,000, $20,000, $30,000? And guys, remember, I think I say anytime I have the opportunity, be human in these conversations. Don't make it sound like going into temporary rental is not an inconvenience. Just call it what it is. Mm-hmm. This may not be as convenient as a different path. However, these are some options. I'm curious, do any of these options seem like options you would want to know more about? You don't have to pretend that moving 3 times or moving twice is convenient for them. Sometimes what I say in coaching calls is, you know what, with all due respect, based on where you currently are and where you want to be, convenience is not a luxury you can afford. Right? I'd love for everything to be convenient in my life. I haven't noticed that to be the case. Right? So sometimes just kind of calling out the inconvenience helps them over that hump that you've now said, yes, it's inconvenient. Sometimes people just want to be heard, and they're over here saying things that they think mean it's inconvenient. And so when you just say, this may be a level of inconvenience for you, I'm curious, are you willing to accept that level of inconvenience? Yeah, Donna, and then Chelsea.
I just want to go back to the beginning when we were talking about mindset. We were talking about mindset, and we were talking about the care call. And I want to say that 2020 was a really, in a way, and I don't mean this for anybody who got sick or lost people, but it was such a gift to me in my business, because starting with the care call, it made me understand more fully how much people need us and what we do. Because through this whole, year, almost a year now, things go on. People die, people have babies, people divorce, people, things happen and people need to move. Sometimes people lost a job and their equity is in their house. They've got to get, and on one of the many multiple calls that I've been on in the last year, somebody said this market is a skills-based market. If you don't know the answer or the option that's going to work, that doesn't mean there isn't one. It means you've got to figure out how to get that information, how to work it out, who can help you, pull on all your resources, with you being the guide and the ultimate provider of the, here are some things that we can do. How does this look to you? Being, I used to call it a control freak, but now I just realize it's being a guide. It's being a leader, helping people get from here to there. And the outcome is not about me. And yet, if you help enough people get what they want, you end up getting what you want. We've all heard that. But just being really, really focused on, realize every single pothole, and I don't think I had a single transaction that didn't have some major pothole that I had never even thought could possibly happen. Some of it was like so in my face. I had one scenario where I really thought the N-word was the next thing coming out of his mouth. I'm just going to be frank with you. It wasn't, but it was almost to that. And yet, I remained, because it wasn't about me. It was about frustration. It was about so many things that had nothing to do with me. And we walked through it and we got to the other. It wasn't from my client. Oh, by the way, it was from the other side, but that's another story. But just to say that the tools that I learned along the way, I'll have forever, even when the market is easier. And I'm a better guide. I'm a better real estate agent because of each one of those potholes that we work through.
What I'm going to add to that is, if each one of us is not waking up every morning thinking, one of my top 2 jobs is to be a problem solver, we're missing the boat.
Yeah. How can I solve that? What's the answer? Donna said something important I want to just underline. She said, are you calling on all of your resources?
Oh,
right.
Yeah.
This is a moment in your business history where all of your resources are required, right? And so what that means is, if you're stuck with buyers who you can't find houses for, and the resource you're using is waking up and looking at the MLS each morning, you are not using all of your resources. You're not utilizing the resources of the 550 other agents that you're in business with, making sure that you're asking all of them for inventory that they might have coming on for your buyers. You're not utilizing lead generation opportunities. You're not writing letters to communities. You're not calling neighborhoods that people want to live in to find your own inventory. You're not searching for sale by owners on Zillow or forsalebyowner.com, or Googling for sale by owners in a certain town and having conversations and meetings with them to see if you can get your folks to buy that particular house, right? You're not utilizing all the resources available to you to find housing. You're not pushing Facebook ads out saying inventory needed, qualified buyers looking for a property in Twin Ridge, please call me today, right? Those are all other resources that you can be utilizing just off the top of my head to make sure that you're dotting every I and crossing every T. When you've signed someone to an agency relationship, please remember, that doesn't say that you will use every available opportunity to look at the MLS for them. It says you'll use every available option and every available path to locate them a property that is acceptable to them, right? So make sure you're really utilizing all of your resources.
Can I add just one thing to that? So,
yes, ma'am.
Talking about using all your resources, again, another mindset shift. And I'm wearing the shirt that says new mindset, new results. I don't know if you've gotten that one yet, but anyhow, I heard someone say, an agent say on one of these multiple calls, he said, what are you talking about buying into the problem and not looking for the solution. She said, what are you talking about when you drive around in your car? There is inventory everywhere. just go get it.
Mhm.
I thought, no, that's a totally different way of looking at it.
Yep.
Show us your shirt.
New mindset, new results. Good.
Love it. Brilliant. Brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. Because here's the fun part, guys. There's only one way to have new results, and that's to start with a new mindset. You don't get there any other way. All right, Chelsea, last one, and then we're out.
Hi, thanks. Sorry, I'm under the weather.
Well, get out from under there.
Yes, I'm trying very hard. I have a client right now, and the sellers, we can't get a hold of them. We can't get answers. We can't get responses. The attorneys are trying. The seller's agent is trying. And he's ready to kind of back out of the deal just because he's frustrated. And I'm trying to be a problem solver and trying to be, keep him engaged and trying to come up with different ways to keep him engaged in it. But I'm just wondering if there's any other suggestions or scripts to use. I just feel like I'm a bit of a broken record and kind of just running out of things because I'm not getting anything from the seller side.
What is it you're looking to get answers on, just for clarity, and then we can help you answer that?
Just are there better scripts to use to help keep the buyer engaged? And
No, that's not what I mean. I mean, what answers are you awaiting from the seller that you're not getting?
We're not getting, we need proof of the tenants making payments. We need clearly filled out disclosures.
Right. So you have an accepted offer, and then there's other stuff that you're now waiting on. Yes.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Got it.
So, and is the seller absentee or local?
Absentee. She left the country.
Oh.
Yes.
All right. So in that situation, the seller's agent and their attorney will need to provide things for you that you need to complete the transaction. And I would work very closely with your client and your client's attorney and be very specific about these are the things we need in order to complete this transaction.
Yep. And that's what we're doing.
And so here's the thing. Let me just interject real quick. It depends on where things are in a transaction, right? So I'm going to generalize this a little bit, Chelsea, and then I'll dive back into specifics. Where you are in the transaction is really important in this conversation, because if you're literally getting from having an accepted offer, having a signed contract, and you just need a couple of things in place to get to a closing table, the reality is those things will happen, right? So sometimes it's a matter of just being confident and having the buyer share in your confidence that, yes, I know it's frustrating that we're not getting it quickly. However, the seller is out of the country and it just simply creates delays, right? Yeah. I've been dealing with the state of Connecticut and the state of Massachusetts on a couple of things recently. Guys, nothing is happening the way it should.
Right.
And at this point, the whole, I hate to even say the word, but the whole COVID excuse, I'm like so sick and tired of hearing it. And yet there are a lot of people and a lot of agencies and a lot of organizations who are still leaning heavy on that, right? So sometimes it's just a matter of making sure that people understand, yes, it'd be nice to have this answer right now. And yet, as long as we have it by the closing date,
right,
it's kind of not relevant that we have it today versus tomorrow. So let's just continue to push and get the answers we need. Now, if you're at a different point in the transaction and the buyer is trying to make a decision about moving forward based on receiving information, I can tell you, me personally, and some of you may not like this tactic, my personal opinion is that you ask again, you maybe ask a third time, you utilize some resources and send other people to task to ask. And at some point you sit and have a conversation with the buyer to say, look, the path that we have left here is to issue an ultimatum. Are you interested in issuing an ultimatum? That may mean that if the ultimatum is not adhered to, that we go and find you a different property to purchase. Are you okay with that? If so, what ultimatum would you like me to give? It's Friday at 2 o'clock. Should we say that if we don't have answers by Monday at noon, the transaction is over and we're moving on? Is that what you'd like me to present? Get aggressive and get strong. Have the buyer give that authority to you to go back to the listing agent with, and at the same time, have the buyer give that authority to their attorney with the same information to go back to the seller's attorney, so that now the seller is hearing it from both sides, that you have this deadline, and if it's not met by this deadline, bam, the transaction is over and we're going to find you something else. One of the ways I have found to get people to answer me is, well, I'll give you two strategies. One, issue an ultimatum with a deadline and mean it. And number two, I use this one a lot. If I'm looking for something, now in Chelsea's case, this one doesn't work because it's not her client. But if I'm looking for an answer from another agent or from another broker or from, I dare say maybe even sometimes some of you have felt this, the pain of this strategy that I use. I just call every hour on the hour until I get someone on the telephone and I get the answer that I want.
Okay.
That's a version of not taking no for an answer, right?
Yeah.
Because when you make an outbound phone call and no one responds, that's a no. And, and at some point that no for an answer is just simply not acceptable to me. I will tell you, when I was still in the field, I have been also known, when people started to ignore me, to show up at their offices. Like other agents, I just wait in the parking lot till they get out of their car and get out of my car and say, hey, sorry, we haven't been able to meet. I was just wondering if we had an answer on so-and-so. Because that's being innovative. That's going the extra step to make sure you're getting the job done for the client. Again, in Chelsea's scenario, she doesn't have control because it's not her client. And yet Chelsea, my main strategy for you is ultimatum time, if that's what the buyer is looking for, because that may be the only thing that anybody listens to.
I did ask the seller's agent why he hadn't gotten on a plane and flown to Europe yet. I did say, I really don't think that you're doing this, to full service. You really should just be on a plane by now.
In a normal circumstance, hey, you know what? Send me on the plane.
Right?
Not necessarily right now, but
Thank you.
You're welcome. Feel better.
Thank you.
All right, guys, it is 2:04. We are out of time. I certainly hope some of this was helpful and some of it was as specific as possible for your scenarios. Just remember, it starts with mindset and it ends with mindset, and in between, just make sure that you're recognizing the objectivity of what we do every day and staying in that objective lane. If you are naturally a subjective person, that will be harder for you. I'm not saying it's simple, right? If you're naturally subjective, you've got to kind of pull that back and try and stay in that objective lane. Keep asking yourself the question, is the action I'm taking now, is the time I'm spending thinking about this, is the time I'm spending talking about it or sending an email about it worth getting us be effective in getting us to the end result? Or is it just making me feel better now? Am I just venting, right? Because here's the thing, in a fast moving marketplace, you don't have time to waste on venting or energy. Save that for when the market slows down, and then vent all you want later on, right? Absorb and take action. Remember that point far, because that's kind of where this whole thing is at. Have an awesome afternoon. Have an awesomer weekend. We will see you Monday morning at 9 o'clock. For those of you who have been asking, yes, the Super Bowl pool will be sent out. The photos of them will be sent out. I will do that before I leave tonight, I promise you, so you can study them over the weekend before the big game on Sunday. If you're a Chiefs fan, good luck. If you're a Bucks fan, good luck. If you don't care either way, have a nice dinner. Have a lovely weekend, and we'll see you soon. Bye-bye, guys. Love you.
Thank you.